Senator Scott.
Thank you, Chair Cantwell. Mr. Graves, thank you for being here, and thank you for your willingness to serve. I grew up in a family that struggled for work, and so I was governor of Florida for 8 years, and I put most of my time into figuring out how we got more jobs. And we were able to do that. We added government didn't, the private sector added 1.7 million jobs, and so I'm very concerned about where we are right now in any policy that would impact job growth. One of my biggest concerns up here is the role that Communist China has played in a variety of things. I mean, they clearly don't comply with any agreements. They don't comply with trade agreements. They're not living up to the last trade agreement. They don't live up to the obligations under the WTO. I've not seen one thing that they've ever done that they said they're going to do, unless other than bad things. And on top of that, they're a horrible human rights abuser with the Uyghurs, with taking away the basic rights of Hong Kong citizens. So my question for you is, and I talked to Bob Lighthizer about this quite a bit when he was the trade rep, is how are we ever going to get them to comply with anything? And who's going to do it? I mean, we don't hold them accountable for their violations of the WTO, and we don't hold them accountable for their violations of the trade agreement. So what would be your plan to hold Communist China accountable?
Thank you, Senator, and I appreciated our conversation on this topic as well. As we've discussed, China is a threat to our security and our prosperity and our values. As we've seen, they have already hurt American workers and businesses. They've blunted our technological advantage. They've challenged our national security, and they've, as you pointed out, committed gross human rights violations. So in answer to your question, I would want to, if confirmed, use all of the tools at our disposal, both defensive and offensive, to protect American businesses and prevent China from this type of illegal practices and illegal actions. I think that it requires a whole of government approach, working with the foreign policy team, the national security team, and our economic policy agencies to develop a whole set of practices for ensuring that the Chinese are held accountable for their actions. And that includes working with our allies and partners around the globe to help them understand that a threat to us is not just a threat to us, it's also a threat to them.
I think we talked about, thank you very much. We talked about this also, seasonal produce farmers, especially I think throughout the Southeast, but for sure the state of Florida. And it seems like Mexico's picked, they did tomatoes first, and they've done strawberries, they've done blueberries, but basically whatever we grow, they dump. And it's really unfair, and it impacts jobs and livelihood of people in my state. And I'm sure it's true in other parts of the Southeast. This was unfortunately not addressed in the USMCA. I worked with the USTR in the past couple of years to see what we could accomplish. And they put some effort into it. So, what do you think we ought to be? How are we ever going to help our seasonal produce farmers in Florida and throughout the Southeast? And do you have any plans for doing that?
Well, thank you, Senator. I would certainly want to work with the career staff at Commerce, but also work closely with USTR and utilize the anti-dumping and countervailing duties rules to make certain that there's fair competition. You have made it very clear that the challenge that the seasonal produce farmers are having, and I think that that's a challenge not just in your state, but other states as well. We need to make certain that there's a fair and level playing field across the globe for our industries, for our workers, and that I would certainly want to work with, as I said, with U.S. Trade Rep, but also the Department of Homeland Security to make sure that foreign companies aren't evading the laws, because we need to make certain that our industries are protected as best as they can be.
Thank you. So one of the roles of the Department of Commerce is just make sure, as you know, we got to get more jobs, and I don't know if that'll ever end. So the need for more jobs as we continue to grow our country, and more people want to come here because of our job opportunities. One concern I have is the $15 minimum wage and the impact that'll have on jobs. The some of the reports say it's over, 1.4 million people are going to lose their job if we raise it to $15. Which, and I know you got the other, you'll be responsible for, trying to make sure we get more jobs. How do you view the minimum wage, and what would you do?
Thank you. Well, if confirmed, I would certainly look to the lead of the president on this, but I think that what we need to do is certainly follow his recommendations that we move to $15 minimum over time. It's clear that brings millions of people out of poverty. At the same time, we need to make investments to ensure that our industries have the support that they need to grow. And also, as I mentioned, that we're working with a fair and balanced, a fair and level playing field across the globe, because that's really the challenge. If we can get our competitors across the globe to play by the rules, it'll make it easier for us to bring up the wages of our employees here in the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Graves. Thank you, Chair Cantwell.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Lujan.